In the 2019 offseason, NBA fans were amazed by what the Brooklyn Nets just did. They were capable of signing two of the greatest players in the league today. Not only that, but they also picked up a reliable center by the name of DeAndre Jordan. Just a couple of seasons later, they picked up one of the greatest scorers in the league today, James Harden, now forming one of the biggest big threes in the league. They would then pick up some veterans who were once unstoppable in their prime, such as Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. This team looked very promising, but now they are losing everyone, and are now only left with the inconsistent and injury-prone Ben Simmons. Ladies and gentlemen, after doing a bit of math and some research, I present to you the $323 million failure made by the Brooklyn Nets. If we take a look at the 2017-18 NBA season, we can tell that the Brooklyn Nets weren't the same team in any way. That season, they had a starting five of Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Caris LeVert, and Tyler Zeller. As we can see, this lineup looks very weak, which explains why they went 28-54 that season. Their most helpful player that season was Spencer Dinwiddie, as he had a win share of 5.7. So after that season, the Nets knew they had to step it up a notch. They haven't been one of the top dogs in the league for a while. So what moves did the Nets make? Well, it started off by re-signing some helpful pieces. Joe Harris would be one of them, as he was looking like a promising shooter. They'd also pick up Ed Davis. Now, Davis may not seem like a helpful piece, but his defensive win shares were at a career high in the 2017-18 season. He was a pretty good rebounder as well, as he averaged a respectable 7 rebounds per game. Now, there are some nice moves, but what did the Nets really do in order to improve the next season? Well, it was simply progressing their players. D'Angelo Russell would not only be added to the starting lineup the following season, but also played 81 games. He had a huge improvement and was rewarded with an invitation to play in the All-Star game at just 22 years old. Russell was not the only guy who progressed, though. If we take a look at Jarrett Allen, he became the starting center for the Nets that season and showed some promising things. According to Basketball Reference, Jarrett Allen was the team leader in win shares that season with 7.6. The Nets would finish the season going 42-40, but unfortunately got eliminated in the first round. Although the Nets got wiped out in the first round, it was obvious this was the start to something big. I'm talking about forming a squad that is built around some stars and very helpful players. Well, the 2019 offseason is a good place to start. The title of this video is mainly coming from that offseason, where the Brooklyn Nets told themselves it's time to spend some money. On June 30th, 2019, it was reported that the Nets were planning on signing 3 players: Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan. Imagine hearing or reading this. You would be in awe. I was shocked when I saw that the Nets were really going to sign both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, 2 guys who know what it's like winning a championship and have a ton of experience in the playoffs. And as for DeAndre Jordan, although his stats were regressing, he still had that dominant big man energy in him on defense. Now, it was obvious the Nets weren't going to win many games the upcoming season. This was because of Kevin Durant's torn Achilles, but Nets fans were patient. They got to see Kyrie play for the first time in the Nets jersey, but it was only for 20 games due to Irving's injuries. Nevertheless, the Nets were still looking good with Kyrie and KD. Now, as for the offseason, the Nets didn't do anything crazy. But let's just pause for a second and take a look at what the Nets have done. So the Nets went from that starting lineup that looked extremely weak to this monstrous house. In the 2019 offseason, the Nets spent around $355 million on signing NBA players, which is obviously a ton of money. And that offseason would go down as one of the craziest offseasons in NBA history. But anyways, moving on to the 2020-21 season. This is where we get to see both KD and Kyrie in action. And taking a look at the duo, they seem to click. They looked like a strong force in the league who could take down any team. People were already saying that the NBA Finals would be the Nets versus the Lakers, but fans got even more convinced after this transaction. On January 14th, 2021, the Brooklyn Nets traded Jarrett Allen, Taurean Prince, and rights to this guy that I can't pronounce his name to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then traded Caris LeVert, Rodions Kurucs, and 3 first-round picks for James Harden. The Nets were involved in a 3-team trade, and what the Nets had to give up seemed like a lot. But what they were getting in return was one of the best scorers in the league today. Now granted, Harden was at the peak of controversy around this time of his career, as he was not showing up to games and instead was out at clubs. But if you looked at the Nets team, you would be shocked by the number of superstars you saw in there. That same season, the Nets also signed Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, 2 guys who were studs in their prime. You'd think the Nets played very well that season, and they did. They won 48-24, but sadly, lost in the semifinals to the Milwaukee Bucks. One reason why the Nets didn't play better than expected was because of more injuries. Both Durant and Irving were still suffering some injuries. But in 2021-22, yeah, this is where stuff gets wild. I think we all know which guy I'm thinking of. Kyrie Irving. So in the previous season, Irving was trending on the media for a bit when he was seen at a birthday party without a mask. Now that was bad, but the next season was a lot worse. Kyrie Irving would barely play in 2021-22 because he refused to get vaccinated. And for the longest time, a law in New York stated that in order to get into an arena without a mask, you must show proof of vaccination. Kyrie refused to get the vaccine, so he basically did nothing. Until the laws kind of changed, Kyrie was then able to play home games, but not on the road because the law remained the same in other states. Either way, Kyrie barely played this year, and it seriously affected the Nets. James Harden would also be traded in the middle of the season, and the Nets would get Ben Simmons for that. It's as if the Nets are obsessed with controversial players. Simmons didn't play a single game for the Nets. And as for Kevin Durant, well, he only played 55 games. And then the offseason came, where the Brooklyn Nets stars said they were done. Kyrie Irving literally told the Lakers front office he wants to play for them, and Kevin Durant originally said he wants to play either in Phoenix or Miami, but now it's just a team with some stars. So now I think it is a good time to explain the title of this video. $323 million. I'm sure you're thinking that the Nets paid their players more than $323 million. I mean, they literally spent $355 million on players in 2019. Well, let me explain. So, when I calculated the amount of money the Nets paid their players as of right now, first off, I was looking at the essential signings and trades. By that, I mean not just the superstars, but also the guys that got teams talking saying they are helpful. So here are 6 guys that I believe the Nets got that were essential. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, and LaMarcus Aldridge. Whether they were more helpful players or not, when these guys were announced that they were either signing or being traded to the Brooklyn Nets, it got those big sports companies like ESPN and Bleacher Report talking. Now, when I calculated the amount of money in total, I didn't look at the full contract. I looked at the amount of money these players made up till today. So for KD and Kyrie, I looked at all the money they made every season with the Nets up to now. Now, as for James Harden, who was traded to the Nets, then traded to the 76ers, I looked at the amount of money he was paid when he arrived in Brooklyn until he was traded. So in total, here's the calculation. And just so you know, this is about to get a bit repetitive, so sorry in advance. And I think it's also important I add that all of the money here isn't exact and is approximately the amount of dough these players were given. Anyways, starting off with Kevin Durant. In 2019-20, Kevin Durant made, according to SpotTrack, $37,199,000. The following season, he made $40,108,000. And last season, he made around $42,018,900. So assuming Kevin Durant will not return to the Nets next season, the Nets paid KD a total of approximately $119,325,900. Quite a lot of money. Moving on to Kyrie Irving. Just like with KD, in 2019-20, Kyrie was paid $31,742,000. The next season, he was paid around $40,108,950. And last season, $42,018,900. If you add all of that up, that gives you $113,869,850. Once again, assuming that Kyrie does not return the next season as a Net, that's how much he was paid. Now let's take a look at James Harden. So that season when Harden was traded to Brooklyn, the Nets paid him around $34,190,721. Then last season, before he got traded, the Nets paid him $29,285,900. So in total, Harden was paid approximately $63,476,621. And as for the other three players, well, DeAndre Jordan was paid $9,263,998 in 2019-20, then $10,375,678 the following season, which gives us a total of $19,639,676. Blake Griffin made $1,229,626 in his first season in Brooklyn, then $2,641,691 last season. In total, Griffin has been paid $3,871,317. And as for LaMarcus Aldridge, he was paid $878,340 the first season in Brooklyn, then $2,641,691 last season, making it a total of $3,520,031. Okay, I hope you guys are still with me, and I feel you if you're bored, but bear with me, we're almost at the end. So if we take all the total salaries Brooklyn paid these 6 guys, who, let me remind you, were looked at as essential pieces for the Nets when they were making their super team, you get a total of $323,703,395, which means that the Brooklyn Nets paid approximately $323,703,395 to get some superstars and good quality players just to peak at the semifinals while having 3 of the most dominant players in the league.